Did you know that India has almost, if not beat the American market? The global motorcycle industry is on the verge of a massive collapse, one that could see prices plummet by as much as 76%. The biggest game changer? The rapid rise of electric vehicles. You know, the one they said that was going to be the future, the one that every government's been trying to push down our throat? Well, it looks like it's come back in the end to bite them in the back. The truth is, as governments push for stricter emissions regulations and force electric alternatives, the demand for bikes and motorcycles has been crumbling. Nobody likes this electric bull, but it's not just that. When we look at prices, we can see that even bikes, which were once the most affordable and offered the best performance, are not the same anymore. Let's look at the industry. Harley-Davidson, Honda, Yamaha, and Ducati, even they are struggling to keep up. If we look at sports bikes like Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki, just a few years ago, some of them were selling for $10,000 to $15,000. Now, don't be surprised if they're around $20,000. Who's going to buy that? Financing used to be an option for us, but that's no longer the case, with interest rates for motorcycles reaching around 8%. Even potential buyers who were once willing to stretch their budgets are walking away. Think about it. Grocery prices are up, eggs are up, everything is up, with costs rising across the board. Even those who would have gotten a bike just because are no longer doing it. Those who did it for the love of the game aren't doing it anymore because affordability just isn't there. If we look at insurance costs in some states, they have tripled in the last 3 years. It's clear why so many customers are abandoning the idea of owning a motorcycle. There used to be something special about Harley-Davidson and the motorcycle culture in the US. There was a feeling, something about riding down the highway on a Harley, but now the culture's changed and we see it everywhere. What's being sold to us is not what we want. We can see this with Bud Light or Jaguar. The kind of ads being pushed on us don't reflect what we actually want. But it's not just that, that's just surface level. The real issue runs deeper. Before, buying a high-performance bike was a rite of passage for younger new riders. But now with prices skyrocketing and disposable income shrinking, it's becoming nearly impossible for young buyers to take an interest in the market if they can't even afford the high-performance motorcycles that they once aspired to own. Seasoned enthusiasts who might have once overlooked these costs are now thinking twice as well. The truth is, this is affecting everyone. Even manufacturers you'd expect to be untouchable, like Harley-Davidson. Unfortunately, even they're struggling. Normally, Harley-Davidson just rolls with the market. When demand drops, they still manage to sell out. But now, the average unsold Harley sits on the shelf for about 120 days. Even flagship models like the Street Glide, once considered untouchable, are feeling the pressure to attract buyers. And this is happening everywhere. You see discounts, incentives, dealerships trying to push sales every day, but even that isn't enough. In places like India, where motorcycles typically move at an alarming rate, the trend has caught up to them as well. They're experiencing some of the same struggles. This is where we are today. In 2024, Zero reported a staggering 40% drop in sales, signaling a harsh reality. High prices and inadequate charging infrastructure are major roadblocks for potential buyers. Even with government incentives aimed at boosting electric bike adoption, the numbers just aren't adding up. Consumers remain hesitant, and manufacturers are left with warehouses filled with unsold inventory. Production targets are being slashed, and Asian competitors flood the market with affordable alternatives, intensifying the competition. EV startups, once filled with optimism and promise, now find themselves battling for survival as larger corporations dominate the space. Another alarming market trend is motorcycle repossession. It's happening left and right. And the reality is that with the average monthly loan payment now exceeding $250, many riders are just struggling to keep up. This has led to a 30% increase in repos. Think about it. People don't have the money to buy, and when they do take out loans, they often can't afford the payments. As a result, repossessions surge, which in turn affects the market. The influx of repossessed bikes is exacerbating an already oversaturated market, making it even harder for dealerships and manufacturers to stay afloat. Have dealers been very wary of accepting trade-in? That is because, again, you can imagine the market value has already gone down. Then you cannot imagine what's happening to the resale value. It's also spiraling downward. This now creates a vicious cycle of riders looking to upgrade to find themselves trapped while leaders tighten their approval rating and for new buyers to enter the market. There's a whole cultural shift in the market, right? Let's go to the European Union. They stringent 5 Euro emissions regulations make it so hard for manufacturers to sell traditional internal combustion motorcycles. And you know what all manufacturers care about. One thing I want you to know, Prof, so you can imagine as compliance cost rises, profit shrinks. forcing these companies to make what they call tough decisions about their future product lines. But the whole image of motorcycles representing coolness, freedom, the leather jacket, the rebellion, that's being lost on this new generation and the ones to come. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, that's for you to decide. So let us know in the comments. The truth is, Gen Z prioritizes sustainability and convenience, and that's the reality. They're choosing public transport, electric scooters, ride-sharing, and other alternatives over motorcycles. They're not drawn to the motorhead culture, the thrill of the ride, or the rebellious spirit that wants to find motorcycles. One of the biggest contributors to this downward spiral is the surging secondhand motorcycle market. As economic pressures mount and new bike prices climb due to inflation and higher production costs, more consumers are turning to used motorcycles for a more budget-friendly option. The rise of online marketplaces like eBay Motors, Craigslist, and CycleTrader has made it easier than ever for buyers and sellers to connect, further undercutting new motorcycle sales. This shift is especially evident among older riders, the core demographic of brands like Harley-Davidson, who are offloading their motorcycles in increasing numbers. As supply in the used market grows, new sales continue to struggle, creating a bleak outlook for the industry as a whole. Pressure on legacy brands. For years, Harley-Davidson has been an iconic name in the cruiser segment, but its core audience is aging out and younger riders aren't stepping in to fill the gap. Despite efforts to modernize its lineup with electric offerings like the Livewire, the brand's still wrestling with declining demand. The question remains, can Harley-Davidson evolve fast enough to weather the storm, or will it be another casualty of the industry-wide decline? Japanese giants like Honda and Yamaha, known for their broad range of motorcycles from commuter bikes to high-performance models, are also navigating rough waters. Honda's funneled significant investments into electric models like the PCX Electric, but the transition from combustion engines to electric powertrains has proven to be expensive and complex. Similarly, Yamaha's entry into the electric space with models like the E01 is moving at a sluggish pace, leaving them vulnerable in a rapidly changing market. Complicating matters further, markets that traditionally relied on affordable motorcycles, particularly in developing countries, are shifting toward electric alternatives at a faster pace than expected. This transition is squeezing out traditional motorcycles, further cutting into the revenue streams of major manufacturers. Economic and supply chain struggles. The economic instability of recent years has only intensified the crisis. While the pandemic initially led to a surge in motorcycle sales driven by a desire for socially distant transportation, the boost was short-lived. As economies worldwide continue to recover unevenly, inflation and high interest rates have made big-ticket purchases, including motorcycles, less appealing to consumers. Adding to these woes, the global semiconductor shortage has wreaked havoc on production. Modern motorcycles rely heavily on electronic components for advanced features such as traction control and ABS, but supply chain bottlenecks have delayed production and increased costs. This has been particularly damaging for brands like BMW and KTM, both of which pride themselves on technologically advanced offerings. Production delays, higher prices, and dwindling consumer confidence are compounding the industry's struggles. Production slowdowns and workforce impact. As demand continues to wane, manufacturers are scaling back production. KTM, Honda, and Triumph have all announced cutbacks to prevent excessive inventory. In 2023, Honda initiated layoffs in its manufacturing plants in India and Thailand, and these reductions have deepened this year. BMW Motorrad, a leader in adventure motorcycles, has also reported a sharp 25% drop in production output compared to 2022. While these production cuts help stabilize excessive inventory, they also bring a wave of negative consequences, including job losses across the supply chain. From assembly workers to parts suppliers, employees in the motorcycle industry are feeling the financial strain, with no clear path to recovery in sight. Meanwhile, smaller manufacturers and niche brands are struggling to stay afloat, with some being forced to shut down entirely. The industry, once diverse and competitive, is becoming increasingly consolidated as bigger companies absorb smaller players in an attempt to survive. A buyer's market? Maybe, but there's a catch. You might be asking yourself, okay, what does this mean for me as a buyer? Well, this can go two ways. It can look like an opportunity and it can look like a problem. Let's start with the opportunity. Right now, bike sales are slowing and prices are dropping. Dealers are hungry, very hungry, which means more discounts, extended warranties, and enticing financing deals. For example, Yamaha dealers are cutting thousands off the MSRP for models like the MT-09. Harley-Davidson is even offering nearly 0% financing for up to 36 months on some models. Like I said, they're hungry. But the same way their hunger benefits buyers, it also affects the market. If you remember, I mentioned earlier that trade-in values have dropped significantly. Motorcycle prices are falling by almost 20% every 6 months. That means if you bought a bike for $10,000 last year, its trade-in value today would only be around $8,000. On top of that, rising interest rates mean that any savings you get on a bike could be completely canceled out by high financing costs. The ripple effects across the industry. This downturn isn't just affecting dealerships and buyers, it's reshaping the entire industry. Major manufacturers are making drastic changes to cope with declining sales. In the US, Harley-Davidson has been forced to cut production, shut down factories, and lay off workers. Price reductions have helped generate some sales, but they've only provided temporary relief. In Europe, iconic brands like Ducati and Triumph are struggling to keep up with a market that's leaning more toward affordable and environmentally friendly alternatives. Even electric motorcycles, once seen as the future of the industry, are facing hurdles. High development costs, limited range, and inadequate charging infrastructure are keeping prices high and adoption rates low. Over in Asia, the largest motorcycle market globally, similar shifts are occurring. India, China, and Indonesia, where motorcycles have been the primary mode of transport for millions, are seeing a shift in demand. In India, traditional motorcycle sales have stagnated as more consumers look toward electric alternatives, especially with government incentives encouraging EV adoption and a looming ban on internal combustion (ICE) vehicles by 2030. Chinese manufacturers like Longchen's and Zhongshan, which have long dominated the budget segment, are now struggling to keep up with technologically superior international competitors. Where does the industry go from here? As prices continue to fall, the long-term consequences of this crash could be significant. More dealerships will likely shut down, leading to fewer places for consumers to buy new motorcycles. Manufacturers will have to fight harder for survival, which could lead to consolidation or even some brands disappearing altogether. If that happens, the variety of available models will shrink, leading to a more homogenized market. Some manufacturers are already pivoting to stay competitive. One promising strategy is focusing on niche segments that remain in demand. Adventure touring motorcycles, for example, have maintained strong sales despite the downturn. Brands like BMW with its GS series, KTM with the Adventure lineup, and Honda with the Africa Twin are capitalizing on this trend, offering bikes that blend performance with versatility. What happens next? Will manufacturers adapt quickly enough to survive? Will prices continue their freefall, making high-end bikes more accessible? Or will the industry contract so severely that major brands disappear altogether? We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think caused this market crash? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on the latest motorcycle news.